Recently, I've been getting emails and comments asking about the worst cities to move to in different regions of the United States. Like I said in the last video, I think the regions videos we did a couple weeks back kind of sparked this interest. Since there's interest, here we are making the video. We just did the best cities to move to in the Western United States. In 2024, well, today we're doing the other side of that coin, doing the worst cities to move to. Like in the best cities video, we looked at different stats and sort of made an educated guess on what we feel would be the worst cities to move to in the West. You won't agree with some of these, I'm sure. Normally it's because cities have reputations from years ago. In the last video, we used Compton, California as an example. Compton back in the 80s and 90s was a horrible place to live. It was dangerous, it was like a freaking war zone. It's still not a great place to live, but it's not nearly as bad as it was back in the day. So if you're expecting to see Compton on this list, you'd be wrong. Another thing, I'm gonna eliminate a couple of them that are just obvious you shouldn't move there right now. San Francisco, Oakland, and Portland, Oregon. We all know those are horrible places to live right now. No need in going over them again. I'll give you other ones to think about. So we'll look at some stats and real estate prices, because that seems to be what a lot of people are here for. We'll also include a neighborhood or suburb that is probably the worst place to live in these metro areas. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Stockton, California. Life in Stockton, California can be a bit challenging, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons for this. High crime, poverty, desert heat. It's the Central Valley, but the summers there are brutally hot. They have serious homeless problems, high unemployment, financial stress on just about every family there. Makes it kind of hard for a lot of the residents to find stable and secure living conditions. This is a city that produced two of the toughest UFC fighters ever. I'm sure they'd rather have some kind of reputation for turning out, doctorate programs, but no, they get UFC fighters that are, about as tough as they get. When you're living in a place like Stockton, I think you kind of have to be. Stockton is definitely not a place you want to live, buy a house, rent, whatever. If you live in there, move away. Now, I'm doing this one in no particular order because I'm doing all kinds of different stats. This is just what we think. It's not as much based on one stat, but if we were, the crime rate here and the poverty could probably put Stockton ahead of everyone else. The crime rate in Stockton is 68% above the national average. Their violent crime rate's like 220% above the national average. If you want to buy a home in Stockton, the average home value is $426,000. It would probably be a little bit higher, the average, but they've got a lot of vacant lots and a lot of just demolished homes and, just nothing going on there. The good news is their property values dropped about 0.4% last year. The worst place to live in Stockton, California is a census-designated area called Kennedy. Kennedy's livability score is one of the lowest I've ever seen. It's 51. The absolute lowest I've ever seen is 46. Number 9, Las Vegas, Nevada. For a long time, everyone was moving to Las Vegas because it was cheaper, homes were going up, you could actually afford a home with a blue-collar job, and the crime was relatively low. That's not the case anymore. The homes are still relatively low. I mean, it's gone up over the last decade at a good pace, but it's still cheaper than a lot of other cities on the West Coast or in the western part of the United States. Not many people live downtown Las Vegas. They usually live in the suburbs like Henderson. And that's where we find one of our worst neighborhoods in the Las Vegas metro area. It's called Valley View. It's in Henderson. It's not that big, but they got some pretty bad stats. And when it comes to the worst place to live, we're going by stats because everyone's got their opinion on what the worst place is, so you got to kind of rely on the stats. If you want to buy a home in the Las Vegas metro area, the average home value is $400,000. Now, that's relatively good for a place that isn't over the top when it comes to crime or poverty. Problem is, right now the jobs are a little weird. Their crime rate's 48% above the national average, and it has a whole bunch of other problems going on there. The typical climate stuff. You got the weather, it's terribly hot there almost all year long. They've got a serious homeless problem, and of course they're running out of water. The other reason it goes on this list is because there's been rumors about an economic downturn. Now, right now, things are going good for Las Vegas as far as the economy's climbing. But Las Vegas and the area around it rely heavily on tourism and service industries. Those are the first to tank when there's an economic downturn. This is all speculation on my part. They've been saying we're about to be hit with a major recession and all that, and that's the first thing that goes downhill is the tourism industry. They get hit hard. When you're getting laid off and you start doing the household budget, the category of travel and leisure is the first one that gets scratched out. Number 8, Anchorage, Alaska. Now, there can be an argument that Anchorage and Alaska isn't on the western part of the United States, but I think it is. A lot of people will only consider it the western United States if it's in the lower 48. But right now, Anchorage kind of sucks. They're going on the list. Since Anchorage made it into the census back in 1920, they've always gained population. In a lot of years, it was triple digits. 1950, 222%, 294% in the 60s, the 80s, 262%, and everything else was double digits until 2020 when they actually lost 0.2%. And since then, they've lost an additional 1.4%, and it's predicted that they'll actually lose close to 15% by the 2030 census. Now, that's a long way off, and something can change by then, but right now they're projected to lose that much. Things aren't great in Anchorage. If you want to buy a home in Anchorage, the average home value is $359,000. That's up 3.1% over the last year. Now, their crime rate isn't terrible. Their overall crime rate, I should say. Well, it sucks. It's 68% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is about 259% above the national average. That's kind of harsh. Now, we get a little tricky when we come to the worst places in here. Statistically, it's an area called Sand Lake. Sand Lake is right up against the airport, and I'm sure that plays into a lot of their issues. When you're around train yards, airports, docks, things of that nature, the crime rate usually spikes a little bit. It's kind of like what's next to your neighborhood really affects your crime rate sometimes. Perfect example of that is Little Tokyo in Los Angeles. Little Tokyo statistically has a horrible, horrible crime rate. But then when you realize Skid Row, where the largest population of homeless in the country is, it's attached to Little Tokyo. But there's places like Rabbit Creek and Hillside East are pretty bad too. Number 7, Honolulu, Hawaii. I know for mainlanders and nobody that's ever been to Hawaii, you're probably thinking, how does paradise have bad neighborhoods? How does paradise have crimes? Well, the pictures are paradise. What's really going on in a lot of the cities in Hawaii, you don't see in pictures and travel brochures. Honolulu is a major tourist destination, so where there's tourists, there's crime. It usually spikes during the tourist season, but the reality is Hawaii is always in tourist season. They got crime, they got homeless. Honolulu is totally crowded. And on top of that, it's one of the most expensive cities to live in the United States. So that makes it really undesirable. This whole list isn't just about crime and poverty. It's about the whole package. Why are these places bad places to live? Cost plays a big part. Everything's expensive in Honolulu. Everything's crowded in Honolulu. If you could afford to live in Hawaii, definitely pick another city. The average home value in Honolulu is $774,000. And that's a really low number. This is one of those places where the home that's livable and nice is probably going to run you over $900,000 and up. Way up, especially if you have an ocean view. And in Hawaii, if you have to stand on a chair in your bathroom and hold up a hand mirror so you could see the ocean through a window, that's called an ocean view. Prices have gone up 2.4% in Honolulu over the last year. Their crime rate isn't terrible. It's 22% above the national average. The worst place to live in Honolulu is one of the weirdest sounding places, Waikiki. It's also a very popular beach. Number 6, Spokane, Washington. From sunshine, happiness, and paradise to Spokane, Washington. If you don't know, Spokane, Washington is on the eastern side of the state, right up against the Colorado border. And stop typing. It's actually Idaho who was leaving that message. Come on, be honest. Who paused the video to leave me a nasty message about not knowing the map of the United States. Spokane is my second favorite city waterfall. The first one is what's going on in Greenville, South Carolina. But I call them city waterfalls because sometimes the city just has a really cool waterfall in the middle of it. Yeah, Spokane's got a really cool one too. Spokane Falls. And that's, kind of where the cool stuff about Spokane ends, It's got some cold weather during the winter. Summers are decent. Really not a ton of jobs. There's a little bit too much poverty for my liking. And if you want to buy a home here, it's $368,000. The good news, it's down 0.9% over the last year. Now, here's the ugly part. Their crime rate is 176% above the national average. That's their total crime. Their violent crime rate is higher than that. It's 269% above the national average. That's getting into St. Louis newest dangerous crime. It's almost like Spokane's trying to catch up with the big boys. If you want to avoid the worst neighborhood in Spokane, statistically, it's East Central Spokane. If you're local, tell me which one you think is the worst. Number 5, Yuma, Arizona. Yuma, Arizona gets on this list because there's nothing there and it's incredibly hot. This is a dust bowl that is in desperate need of buckets of sunblock or a bulldozer, either one. Oddly enough, Yuma, Arizona, their high school football team is called the Criminals. One thing I like about Yuma, they're not changing that. With all this political correct nonsense going on where high schools have to change their names, Yuma's not doing it. They're sticking with the Criminals. My high school, after being so proud that they didn't switch theirs, we used to have this whole cowboy Indian theme going on in West Torrance. Yes, we were 3 blocks from the beach and we went within the cowboy and Indian theme. My high school colors were brown and yellow. Not dark brown and gold like it is now. When I went there, it was brown and yellow. But I was always so proud that they didn't bend to pressure and change their name and get rid of their Native American logo. Last year, they changed to the Warthogs. I no longer donate money to anything they ask for. Another little added thing to Yuma, their poverty rate is about 3% higher than the national average. The good news is, if you wanted to move to Yuma, Arizona, the home prices are pretty affordable. The average home value in Yuma, Arizona is $284,000, but that's up 2.4% from last year, and it's expected to continue to climb. Why is it continuing to climb? Not because Yuma's the greatest place to live, it's just affordable right now. People are looking for affordable homes. Their crime rate is 3% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is about 28% above the national average. And their worst place to live is Rancho Mesa Verde. Or Verde, however you want to say it. Now, there's another strange fact about Yuma that should keep people from moving there. All the young people move out. Now, they have a lot of babies there, and they've got a lot of old folks, but it's like all the 18 to 24-year-olds skip town as soon as they can. Number 4, Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma is often overshadowed by Seattle. People really don't talk about Tacoma. Tacoma is, it's like Seattle, it's like Portland when it comes to the weather. It's rainy most of the year, or at least it seems like it's rainy most of the year. A lot of people suffer from that seasonal depression thing. It's just all the gray skies, gloomy weather just brings people down. Tacoma, like Portland and Seattle, we got a lot of that. They have some serious homeless situations in Tacoma, and a lot of it has to do with drug abuse and economic disparity. The good news, the crime rate's getting better, but it's still pretty bad. They've done a lot of community policing efforts, youth programs, things like that, try and keep people off the street and off drugs. But yeah, serious homeless problem, serious drug problem going on in Tacoma. If you want to buy a house there, the average home value is about $458,000. That's up 1.6% over the last year. Their crime rate is where Tacoma gets pretty scary. Their total crime rate is 337% above the national average. Their violent crime rate is 335% above the national average. That's brutal. That is honestly like Detroit numbers right there. Actually, Detroit's total crime rate is a little bit lower than Tacoma. The worst place to live in Tacoma, Washington is Tacoma. Doesn't matter what neighborhood it is, just Tacoma is a bad place to live. Number 3, Eugene, Oregon. Eugene, Oregon gets on this list because, like Portland, they've got a serious homeless problem. It's also a college town, which gives it a lot of extra headaches. And it's a major college town. This is where you will find the University of Oregon and a bunch of things that are painted green and yellow. Besides a whole bunch of college kids, like I said, they got a whole bunch of homeless people here. I was there 9 months ago, thought I'd decide to go down to this one area and, pull out my camera and do a little filming. It was supposed to be a nice park. It was not. It was Tent City, and it smelled like a sewage plant. Eugene, like Portland, has a lot of potential, and at one point, these were 2 really, really great cities. They still will be eventually. They've just got to, do some things to fix things. I always hope the best for every city in the United States, even though I make fun of them. That's what I do. I really hope Detroit turns things around. I really hope St. Louis tackles all its crime problems. I hope someone takes a bulldozer to East St. Louis. Nothing's fixing that thing. Anyway, if you want to move to Eugene, Oregon, the average home value is $454,000. Their total crime rate is 63% above the national average. Their violent crime rate's 160% above the national average. And the worst place to live is probably going to be West Eugene. There's an argument for other places, but statistically, West Eugene's going to be your worst. Number 2, San Bernardino, California. San Bernardino, which it's really strange. I brought this up before. I was talking to Nick Johnson, who actually grew up there not too long ago. I grew up west of there, about an hour's drive. Where I come from, we call it San Bernardino. Just like one word, shortened it, and everyone else calls it San Bernardino, like it's spelt. It's weird. I come from a weird area. Anyway, San Bernardino has had better days. Back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't a terrible place to live. These days, it is a terrible place to live. The crime has climbed pretty good. They've got a whole bunch of homeless people, whole bunch of closed down businesses, and yet the home prices are still going up. I don't understand the math. San Bernardino also gets really hot. If you look at downtown Los Angeles, where all that smog is coming from, even though it's gotten better in the last couple of years, it's still pretty bad. Well, when the wind comes off the ocean, it just blows all that out to places like Riverside, Ontario, and San Bernardino. The worst part of it, San Bernardino is right up against the mountains, so when that smog gets swept inland, it kind of sits there. And air quality plays a big part of why this is one of the worst places to live in the West. If you want to buy a home in San Bernardino, the average home value is $458,000. That's up 5% over the last year. Everyone else is going down. Well, I should say most places are going down. They're going up. Their overall crime rate is 78% above the national average. Violent crime rate's 120% above the national average. The worst place to live here, there's a neighborhood called Woodcrest and San Bernardino in general, like downtown. Horrible place to live. Well, not downtown, but the city itself is a bad place to live. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link for that down below. All the money for that goes to schools. So if you want to watch some videos, share my videos, that would be great. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Fresno, California. Fresno, California is north of Los Angeles in the middle of the state. If you're looking for it on a map, it is between Stockton, which was earlier, and Bakersfield. The only good thing about living in Fresno is you're pretty close to some really cool national parks. Yosemite, Sierra National Forest, Sequoia and Kings Canyon, Sequoia National Park, Inyo National Forest. The downside is you're living in Fresno. Fresno kind of blows. Fresno blows in a big way. My friend Eric grew up in Fresno. He's the first one to tell you, this place sucks. People move to Fresno when they can't afford California, but they still want to stay in California. That's almost like a double negative. If you're demented and you want to live in Fresno, the average home value here is $364,000. That's extremely expensive for Mississippi, but extremely low for California. That is up 1.6% over the last year. The total crime rate in Fresno, California is 86% above the national average, and that's really low when you look at their violent crime rate, which is almost 150%, 149 above the national average. Let's say you want to move to Fresno and you're worried about the worst place to live in Fresno. That's going to be West Fresno. There's a few other places that are just about as bad, but statistically, West Fresno is the absolute worst. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.